you, Madam Toastmaster and fellow Toastmasters, and Jackie, welcome back. Selecting your speech topic. I have a heck of a time always coming up with a speech topic. I think I am the most boring person. What could I ever talk about? In our club, we only get a speaking opportunity every 6 weeks because our club is just growing, and with new members, our opportunities just don't come up that often. That electable should be enough time for me to find something to talk about every 6 weeks. Well, in Toastmasters, we get our manual, and these manuals have guidelines that we need to follow. And I've seen members, when they first get their manual, they'll page through it, and they'll say, oh, the icebreaker, and they'll look at the objectives and think, oh, personal experiences, and they'll think of an idea, and they'll go ahead and write it in. We'll go to the next one, organize your speech, and the criteria will be outline transitions from one idea to the next. Oh, I'll talk about my gardening, and they'll go ahead and write that in, and they go through the entire book, and so they're ahead of the game. I've never done that. But I do like that idea. What I find with myself is I have kind of faced topic burnout. And when this happens, I have 2 general sources of information I like to share with you. Number 1, personal experience. Well, remember the objectives about your icebreaker. They talked about yourself, talk about your family or your background or your childhood. And then also you could talk about what you hope to get out of Toastmasters. All of these ideas about the icebreaker are objectives. These objectives has everything to do with our speech ideas. When a speaker is personally involved in their topic, the audience recognizes it. The more personal involvement, interest, and enthusiasm you bring to the speech, the more likely the audience will respond to it positively. Again, let's look at that icebreaker. It only lasts 4 to 6 minutes, and probably there are many aspects of your life that you've never even touched on in your icebreaker. So go back and revisit that. You could develop your speech on if you liked baseball at one point in your life, maybe in your childhood. What is it about baseball that you liked? Is it being a participant, or is it being a spectator? Do you have strong opinions on the managerial aspects of the game? There's all sorts of information that would be good in a speech. Maybe you're a statistical person and you like to keep track of the wins and losses, or things about the World Series. Those would be great speech ideas. Maybe there's a certain athlete. John likes to follow Tiger Woods. We've heard speeches about that. Just simply apply the personalized approach to an experience that you found meaningful. A childhood memory would be a great speech subject. Your first job. Do you travel? Where do you travel? How do you travel? When do you travel? All these are ideas, and you can use as springboards to make interesting speeches. Number 2, a general source of information would be reference materials. How about a book that you've read recently? A magazine or newspapers. Newspapers and magazines have everything from entertainment, editorial comments, business trends, latest discoveries in science and medicine. And don't forget to scan the pages that include letters to the editor, advice columns, and personal commentaries. Have you read or heard of a humorous subject in a general interest? By using these materials as inspiration for your own ideas, observations, and opinions, you'll have making of a riveting speech. Inspiration may come from a television program, conversation with a friend, or exercising. I know when my kids were younger, I did not have quiet time. So when I'd go to the Y, I'd drop them off at the daycare, and I'd be out exercising, that's when I did my best thinking. So I learned to take a tiny little golf pencil and a little piece of paper so that when these ideas came to me, oh, I have to email or I have to make a doctor's appointment, whatever it was, I always had my notes with me. So that when I went back to get the kids at the daycare and the screaming kids and I'm hungry and he's fighting with me and what's for dinner, I could take care of my notes at a later time. The one thing I want to just make sure I drive home the point is when you get those ideas, make sure you write them down because they could be lost forever. But now I wake up in the middle of the night, my kids are grown, and I'm thinking about things. And I used to turn on the lamp and look for a pen and a paper and write these things down. And of course, I'd wake up my husband. So what he did, he bought me a light-up pen and a notebook. So now I just scratch it out, shut off my pen, and go back to sleep. And then I've got my notes I can look at in the morning. There are so many topics. Our brain is always fermenting these wonderful ideas that come through our mind. But I would like you to consider 3 elements when you come up with your speech. Number 1, know your audience. How many people will be there? What's the age range? Do they have similar backgrounds? Number 2, what's the occasion? John's daughter will be getting married soon. I bet she'll be giving a toast. So how much time will John have to give his toast? Will there be a microphone? Will there be emotions? Of course there'll be emotions, but and that's good, but we don't want to fall apart. So I mean, there's just many parts of the occasion that you need to consider. And of course, lastly, your own abilities. Do you have enough enthusiasm and interest to capture the audience's attention? And how much time is allowed? If I wanted to talk about my vegetable garden and all the wonderful vegetables I get this season, and then of course I'm going to can them all and eat them in the winter, that's way too much information in 8 minutes. So I might, on one speech, talk about planting my vegetable garden. In my next speech, I might talk about the fruits of my labor and maybe entering something in the county fair. And then in another speech, how to can, and I might bring in some of my tools for canning and recipe books. So out of that one idea, my garden, I ended up with 3 speeches. I hope I offered you some ideas for coming up with some speech ideas. But as John Steinbeck said, ideas are like rabbits. You start with a couple, and you end up with a dozen ideas. Thank you.